Title: She lost her job saving the life of 10-year-old boy hit by the bullet. Next day she got presidential invite. Part 1. The Hidden Letter. Clara Jensen sat in her small, cluttered apartment, a worn-out leather journal spread before her on the table. The sound of raindrops tapping against her window was a constant, rhythmic companion. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the edges of the journal, the one that had belonged to her late mother. It had been left to her when her mother passed away, but its contents had always remained a mystery to Clara. The pages were filled with cryptic notes and half-finished thoughts, some written in ink, others in strange symbols that Clara had never been able to decipher. The journal had always felt like a burden, something she couldn't bring herself to fully understand, let alone face. But today, for reasons she couldn't explain, Clara felt a strange pull to open it. As she flipped through the pages, something caught her eye, a folded piece of paper wedged between two sections of the journal. Her heart raced as she gently unfolded the paper, revealing a letter. It was addressed to her, in her mother's handwriting, though she had never seen her write anything like this before. Clara, my dear, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. But know this, there's a truth I never shared with you, one that you must uncover for yourself. It's hidden in plain sight, in places you've seen every day. You must look beyond the surface, listen to the whispers, and trust the people who should be the hardest to trust. The answers will come when you least expect them, but only if you are willing to open your eyes. Clara's hands shook as she read the letter again. What was her mother talking about? What truth had she hidden from her? The letter didn't explain anything, only leaving her with more questions. But there was something in the way it was written that made Clara feel as though it was more than just words on paper. Her mother had always been a woman of few words, but when she did speak, it was always with purpose. The sound of her phone buzzing on the table pulled Clara from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, an unfamiliar number. She hesitated, but something inside her told her to answer. Hello, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause on the other end of the line before a voice, deep and measured, replied. Clara Jensen, we need to talk. You're about to uncover something that will change everything. Part 2. Unraveling the Past. Clara sat in stunned silence for a moment, her mind racing. The voice on the other end of the phone was unfamiliar, yet it carried a weight that made her feel uneasy. Her instincts told her to hang up, to disconnect from whatever was happening, but she couldn't. Something deep inside her felt as though this was the moment she had been waiting for. Who is this? She asked, her voice trembling. It's not important right now, the voice replied. What matters is that you found the letter, and now you need to find the rest. You're already on the right path, Clara, but you don't know the whole story. Clara's heart began to pound in her chest. What do you mean? What story? There was a sigh on the other end of the line, and then the voice spoke again. The story of your mother's past. It's a story that's been buried for years, hidden by those who wanted to forget. But you can't forget it. You must uncover the truth. It's the only way to protect yourself. Protect myself from what? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. You'll understand soon enough. But for now, you need to trust me. Go to your mother's house. There's something there that will help you. Clara was silent for a moment, processing the words. Her mother's house had been empty for years, ever since her passing. It had always been a place of sorrow and confusion for Clara, a place she avoided. But now, the idea of going back felt unavoidable, like a magnet pulling her towards something she didn't yet understand. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'll go, Clara said, her voice firm despite the fear rising within her. But if this is some kind of prank... It's not a prank, the voice interrupted. I promise you, Clara, you'll find everything you need there. The truth will be revealed, one way or another. Before Clara could ask any more questions, the line went dead. Clara stared at her phone for a long moment, her mind spinning with confusion. The letter from her mother, the strange phone call, the cryptic message, it was all too much. But she knew one thing for certain. She had to go to her mother's house. There was no turning back now. Part 3. The House of Secrets. The drive to her mother's house felt longer than it ever had before. Clara's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white, as the rain continued to fall in sheets around her. Her mother's house was nestled on the outskirts of town, far away from the bustle of the city. It was a quiet, old place, a two-story Victorian home that had been in the family for generations. Clara hadn't stepped foot inside it since her mother's funeral, the memories too painful to bear. But now, as the headlights cut through the darkness, Clara felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Something was waiting for her there. She could feel it. When she finally pulled up to the house, the front porch light flickered, casting eerie shadows across the yard. The house loomed before her like a forgotten relic from another time. The paint peeling, the windows dark and lifeless. It looked even more haunting in the rain, as though it had been abandoned by time itself. Clara hesitated before getting out of the car. Her heart hammered in her chest, her breath shallow. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she knew she had to face it. As she stepped onto the porch, the old wooden boards creaked under her weight. She fumbled with the key her mother had given her years ago, a key she'd almost forgotten about. It slid into the lock with ease, and the door groaned as she pushed it open. The smell of dust and mildew immediately hit her, and Clara felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. It was as if no one had lived here in years, and yet everything seemed frozen in time. Her mother's belongings were still scattered about. Books on the shelves, a forgotten cup of tea on the kitchen counter, and the faint sound of a clock ticking somewhere in the distance. Clara's footsteps echoed through the empty house as she moved from room to room, searching for, she wasn't sure what. The phone call, the letter, everything had led her here, but she had no idea where to begin. In the living room, her eyes landed on the fireplace. It was an old, grand structure, one that had always been a centerpiece of the room. But tonight, something caught her attention. Above the mantel, there was a small, framed picture of her mother, a photograph she didn't recognize. It was old, worn at the edges, and yet, something about it felt off. Her mother's smile in the photo seemed forced, her eyes distant, as if she was hiding something. Clara reached for the picture, pulling it from the wall. As she did, a small scrap of paper fell from the back of the frame. It was folded neatly, and the handwriting on it was unmistakable. It was her mother's, but this note was different from anything Clara had ever seen. Clara, when the time comes, you will find this. It's the key to everything. Don't trust anyone but yourself. The house holds the answers you seek. Clara's pulse quickened as she read the words. This note was meant for her. But what did it mean? She looked around the room, her eyes scanning every corner. The house was full of memories, but it was also full of secrets. Suddenly, she heard something, a soft creaking sound, as though someone had stepped on the stairs. Clara froze, her heart racing. She wasn't alone. Hello, she called out, her voice shaky. No answer. Clara moved cautiously toward the staircase. The air felt heavier now, as though something unseen was watching her. She took a deep breath and ascended the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the top of the stairs, she noticed a door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, and a thin stream of light filtered through the crack. Clara's instincts screamed at her to turn back, but she couldn't. She had to know the truth. She pushed the door open slowly. The room inside was small, barely furnished, but it was what she found in the center of the room that made her blood run cold. A large wooden chest sat in the middle of the floor, covered in dust, as if it hadn't been touched in years. Clara felt an overwhelming urge to open it, as though it was calling to her. She knelt down and reached for the latch, the sound of the chest creaking as she lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in an old, faded blanket, was a small box. It was intricately carved with symbols Clara didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to shimmer slightly in the dim light. She carefully picked it up, her fingers trembling as she traced the patterns on the surface. The box felt heavy, as though it contained something far more significant than its size suggested. She opened the box, revealing a set of old keys. There were 5 of them in total, each one unique in its design. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she picked up the first key. It looked familiar, like something she had seen before, but she couldn't place it. Suddenly, the house seemed to grow colder. The air felt thick, and Clara had a distinct feeling that she was not alone. She spun around, but the hallway behind her was empty. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. She pulled it out quickly, hoping for some answers. The number was the same as before, the one that had called her earlier. Clara, listen carefully, the voice on the other end said. You found the first key. There are more, and each one will unlock a door. But be warned, not all doors should be opened. Some things are better left behind. The line went dead. Clara stood frozen, the weight of the keys in her hand seeming to grow heavier with each passing second. She had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. She was on the edge of discovering something monumental, something that would change everything she knew about her mother and about herself. Part 4. Unraveling the Truth. The phone call left Clara in a state of stunned silence. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend the cryptic warning. What did it mean? What was it about these keys, and why had her mother hidden them in this house? Every fiber of her being screamed that she needed answers, but at the same time, fear gripped her heart. What if some doors were better left unopened? What if some truths were too dangerous to face? Clara stuffed the keys back into the box and closed it tightly. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, though the house remained eerily still. The silence hung heavy, broken only by the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. She was alone, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on her. She closed the chest and stood, her legs shaky beneath her. She had to move. She couldn't just stay in this room forever. The keys were the key to unlocking everything. But to what end? Was she ready to know the truth about her mother? The strange feeling that something dark had been buried here, hidden away, gnawed at her. Suddenly, her gaze fell on the old mirror hanging at the end of the hallway. It was large, antique, and covered with a layer of dust. Clara hadn't noticed it before, but now it seemed to call to her, its surface gleaming faintly in the dim light. As if pulled by some unseen force, Clara walked toward it. She had always found mirrors to be unsettling, never quite trusting the reflections they offered. But tonight, something about this one felt different. Her footsteps were hesitant as she approached, and when she stood directly in front of it, she felt a shiver crawl down her spine. She stared at her reflection, her eyes meeting her own, but then something changed. A flicker in the mirror, a brief moment of distortion. Clara blinked and looked again, but her reflection was unchanged. Yet, as she examined herself more closely, something caught her attention. A faint shape behind her, a shadow that wasn't there when she turned to look. She whirled around, her heart thundering in her chest, but the hallway was empty. No shadows, no movement. Just the old house settling with the wind. But when she turned back to the mirror, the shadow was there again, clearer this time, stretching out from the edges of the frame, creeping toward her reflection. Clara took a step back, her breath coming in shallow gasps. What was happening? The reflection in the mirror shifted again, this time showing something different. An image of the room she stood in, but with a figure in the corner. It was a woman, wearing a faded dress, her back turned, as if she was waiting for Clara to approach. The woman's long, dark hair cascaded down her back, and her posture was unnervingly still. Clara's heart skipped a beat. The woman in the mirror looked so real, so vivid. Was it a trick of the light? A figment of her imagination? Or was there something in this house, something beyond her understanding, at play? She reached out, her hand trembling, as she touched the surface of the mirror. The cold glass sent a shiver through her fingertips. The reflection of the woman in the corner remained motionless, waiting. Without thinking, Clara spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" The woman's head slowly turned, and Clara's breath caught in her throat. The face that met her gaze was unmistakable. It was her mother. But it wasn't her mother as Clara had known her. This woman's expression was cold, distant, and her eyes, they seemed to pierce right through Clara, as though she was seeing her for the first time, for the last time. Before Clara could react, the mirror's surface rippled, the image distorting as though the glass were turning liquid. The woman in the reflection reached out, her hand stretching toward Clara, her lips forming a silent plea. Clara stumbled back, gasping for breath, her mind spiraling into chaos. She was losing herself in this house, in these memories, in these strange, haunting visions. Suddenly, the house seemed to groan, the walls shifting as if they were alive. The floor beneath Clara's feet trembled, and the air grew thick, almost suffocating. She felt a cold gust of wind rush past her, the once quiet house now alive with strange energy. The keys in her hand rattled, as though urging her to move. Clara's instincts screamed at her to leave the room, but the pull of the house was too strong. She had to know what was happening. She had to understand the vision in the mirror. The woman, was it her mother, or was it something else? Something darker, tied to the secrets of the house? Clara forced herself to turn away from the mirror. The hallway seemed longer now, stretching endlessly before her. The air felt oppressive, as if the house were closing in on her. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The keys were meant to unlock something, and the time had come to find out what. With trembling hands, she walked toward the staircase and descended into the dim-lit foyer. Her mind raced, the weight of the keys heavy in her pocket. The air was thick with tension, and every creak of the floorboards beneath her felt like the sound of something unseen moving through the house. Clara reached the living room, where the fireplace still stood, its hearth cold and unused. The room felt like a dead space, frozen in time. And there, on the mantel, the framed photo of her mother still hung. But as Clara approached, her eyes caught something new, a faint, almost imperceptible outline behind the picture. The photo seemed to have shifted, its edges curling up. She reached for it, pulling it off the wall and turning it over. What she saw sent a chill racing through her veins. Behind the photo, a small, secret compartment had been opened. Inside, a note lay crumpled, its edges yellowed with age. Clara unfolded it carefully, the handwriting familiar yet unsettling. The truth lies beneath the house. You've always known this. But beware, Clara. Some truths cannot be undone. Clara's mind swirled as she read the words. Beneath the house? She had to find out more. But what if opening that door was a mistake? What if, once she knew, there was no going back? Part 5. The Truth Beneath. Clara's pulse raced as she stood there in the living room, the crumpled note still in her trembling hands. Beneath the house. The words echoed in her mind, growing louder with every breath. What could it mean? What had her mother been hiding all these years? And why had she never told Clara about it? Her thoughts swirled with questions, but there was one truth that cut through the fog. She couldn't turn back now. The house, her mother's secrets, and the strange visions. Everything was leading her to this moment. She had to find what was hidden beneath. The floor beneath her seemed to hum with energy as Clara walked toward the back of the living room, where an old wooden door stood half-hidden behind a faded curtain. It had always been there, but she had never paid much attention to it. The house had so many hidden corners, so many unspoken histories, that it was easy to overlook the small details. Now, though, she couldn't ignore it. She reached for the door's brass handle, feeling the cool metal beneath her fingers. The sensation sent a shiver up her spine, as though the house itself was warning her to stop. But there was no stopping. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into darkness. Clara's heart thudded in her chest as she descended the stairs, the silence oppressive around her. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of earth and dampness clung to the walls. The stairs seemed to go on forever, each step heavy with the weight of the past. Her breath quickened as the darkness deepened, swallowing her whole. At the bottom of the stairs, Clara paused. The air was colder here, colder than anywhere else in the house. The darkness seemed alive, moving and shifting around her. She fumbled for her phone, the only source of light she had, and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light sliced through the darkness, revealing a stone floor covered in moss and the faint outlines of old wooden beams above her. The room was small, but its walls held secrets, ancient and forgotten. There were no windows, only shadows. As Clara took another step forward, the floor creaked beneath her feet, the sound echoing through the silence. A low, unsettling sound echoed in the distance, faint, but growing louder. It was like a whisper, carried on the wind. Clara's heart skipped a beat as she strained to listen. The whisper seemed to come from all directions, impossible to pinpoint. She turned in circles, her flashlight dancing across the walls, but there was nothing there, just the darkness. Then, her eyes fell on something. At the far end of the room, near the farthest wall, a small trapdoor lay hidden beneath a tattered rug. The edges of the door were chipped, old, and weathered, but Clara could feel the pull of it, like it was meant to be found. Like it had been waiting for her. With a steadying breath, she crouched down, her hands trembling as she gripped the edges of the trapdoor. It resisted at first, but with a final heave, it creaked open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the earth. Clara hesitated for only a moment before stepping into the darkened passageway. The air was thick with the scent of old earth and decay, and the walls seemed to close in on her with every step she took. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening now, as though the very walls were alive with voices from the past. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her feet moved on their own accord, carrying her deeper into the unknown. She had to know what lay at the end of this tunnel. She had to know what her mother had been hiding. The tunnel curved sharply to the left, and Clara stumbled, catching herself against the stone wall. She felt dizzy, disoriented, as if the world itself had shifted. She needed to find out the truth. Finally, she reached the end of the tunnel, where a small, dimly lit room awaited her. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with old books, dusty jars, and strange artifacts. It was like a forgotten archive, a place where the past had been locked away. But what caught Clara's attention was the large, wooden chest at the center of the room. The chest was old, its surface covered in intricate carvings, but it had clearly been disturbed recently. The lid was slightly ajar, as though someone had been here before her. Clara's breath hitched as she walked toward the chest. The whispers in the air seemed to grow louder, more urgent, as though something was reaching out to her. She slowly lifted the lid, her hands trembling, and the moment she did, the room seemed to hold its breath. Inside the chest was a collection of old, yellowed papers, tied together with a worn leather strap. Clara picked up the papers carefully, her hands shaking as she untied the strap and began to read. The pages were filled with her mother's handwriting, distorted and shaky, as though written in a hurry. As Clara read, the words began to make sense, and with each line, the truth became clearer. Her mother had been hiding something far darker than Clara had ever imagined. The house, the secrets, the strange occurrences, everything had been leading to this moment. Her mother had known about a dark past, a history of betrayal and loss, and Clara's discovery now threatened to unravel everything. But it wasn't just the past that haunted this house. It was the things that still lingered beneath the surface. Things that hadn't been dealt with, things that wanted to be remembered. Her mother had tried to protect her, to keep her away from this truth. But now it was too late. The final words of the letter were etched into Clara's mind, burned into her memory. The house will never let you go, Clara. The truth will always find you. It was never meant to stay buried. Clara felt a cold hand on her shoulder, and she spun around, her flashlight dropping to the floor with a crash. The shadows were alive, swirling around her, and in the darkness, a figure stood. Her mother. But not the woman Clara had known. This was something else, something twisted, something bound to the house, to the secrets it held. The truth had come to claim her, and there was no escaping now. The darkness closed in around Clara, and the last thing she heard was the whispering voice, urging her to remember. It's too late. You should have stayed away.